Guess what? Now I can use natural language to chat with SQL database that store all information about you, my twin.
About me?
Yes, that sounds dangerous. We're recording a video, be cautious. Check. How much coffee did MG drink last week?
According to the database, oh man, MG drank 56 cups of coffee last week. Not sure if he's still alive.
Overdose. How much we are paying for this coffee? You don't want to show us how you did drag and chat with SQL database through natural language? Yeah. Well, I use Vanna to chat with SQL database using natural language. I'm gonna show you. Then, let's go.
Before we start, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon so you will get notified for the next video. Thank you. Alright, let's get into how Vanna can help us to chat with our SQL database. So that means we no longer need to write query in SQL to get some results from our database. We can just use natural language as I talk to have some sort of RAG scenario, but this time with your SQL database. Well, now, why Vanna? And I know you might have heard some other solutions like LangChain. I created a video that LangChain does the same thing. You can chat with your SQL data. And I just came across Vanna and I found they have a new different side point of view of how you can chat with your SQL data with some changes that potentially can be good for even complex scenarios. So thought to create a quick tutorial out of it. So when you ask a question from your database, if you follow my pointer, what they will do, instead of just directly getting your question and converting into a SQL database, SQL query by LLM to get the answer, this is what typical chat with SQL database look like. They first do some search on metadata. What does that mean? When you create a connection to your SQL database so you can generate a query and get the answer, of course, the final answer will be not a SQL query, you will just get the results. You can also define some metadata about your SQL database. For example, you can talk about any schema information you have about your database, so it will let the job for LLM easier to generate a SQL query on behalf of you. Or any documentation. For example, you have some information about your business terms, some specific keywords that you have about your business, some rows and columns and tables, and they are documents. They are not just necessarily a simple example. You can even add free text there. Or if you can have some natural language question and they generated SQL query as a few shot example, you can also add it as your information metadata for helping LLM to generate an answer. When you add this information, which wanna call it training data set, of course you're not going to train a model here. The concept is just helping the LLM generate a SQL query. That's why we call it training data and wanna call it training data. Then they're gonna be stored in a vector database. Why? Because they will be as embedding, and when we ask our question from LLM, so LLM going to generate a SQL query, we will do something like RAG to bring relevant metadata information to LLM to help LLM generate a more precise SQL query, and then this SQL query will go to our database, get executed, and the result will be back for us. So the result will not go to LLM, so LLM won't see our data and our query results. Query results directly comes to us, and also wanna visualize the outcomes like charts using Plotly. If you like the answer, you say yes, and you can use that question that you asked and the answer which was correct as an example of few shot going back to your vector store using correct answer SQL examples. That's the option you can have there. And this end-to-end solution comes with the front end as well. I think they have the Streamlit version, Flask version. I'm gonna run actually, I think the Flask version. So you don't need to even think about a front end chatbot that you can chat. So I'll show you how you can just quickly execute it. So to summarize what I just said, on left side, we have information called metadata, or wanna call it training data, to help LLM generate more SQL queries. So you will have three type of training data. DDL, the data definition language for SQL. So this is like a schema, column names, or whatever that you think is helpful for creating a better query. Any documentation that can be free text, I'm going to show you. And some SQL query examples. Like here's a question, here's a query, here's a question, here's a query. To use it as a few shot for LLM to generate better queries. And then after adding these trainings, we create embeddings and we store these embeddings. There, that's going to be your vector database choice if you go with open source community version of Vanna. And then on the right side, when you ask a question, first it generates embedding out of your question and do some RAG stuff to find relevant information from this training data to bring it to the prompt. Just think about it. Let's say you might have variety of different tables in the database, and now your question should query table number 2. But for query table number 2, I don't need to know the schema of table number 1, 3, or I might know them because I have to do some joining and merging and stuff, right? That's why we should find relevant information needed for generating this query, and that's why we are going to have some similarity measurement between what you have stored from metadata and what the question is about to find relevant information, then give it to the LLM that, hey LLM, you want to generate this query, by the way, here are some metadata information that helps you, some relevant metadata information to help you generate this SQL query. And then query is created, then done. It's going to get executed and the result will be back to you. Okay, so let me show you how you can start with open source community version of Vanna. All right, so here's the code. I will add this code to the Discord channel. If you go to the Discord channel link, which is added in the video description, there's a reference section that you click on the reference section, you'll see the link of this code. And for this code, you can run it on anywhere that you have Python installed. So here I'm just using Google Colab as an example. Now, we are starting with the open source based community version of Vanna. Technically, you can bring your own LLM. I mean, the LLM that you connect to. Here I chose OpenAI. And then for the metadata part, or which Vanna call training, you have to also have a vector database. So I selected ChromaDB, which is an open source version. I can run it locally, right? Because I selected these two, they gave me this code reference. So I need to install Vanna with ChromaDB and OpenAI. So I already installed that before I record a video. And obviously I added my API key from OpenAI and the model that I'm going to choose for chatting with my SQL database. And I ran this before I record the video, so I removed the API key. Now for chatting, what type of SQL database you can have option here? Well, technically whatever has listed and many more, you can bring it and connect it to your database and start chatting with it. For this quick example, I added SQLite because I could bring it to my local directory here and I just added the path so I can start chatting with the SQLite. But of course, that can be your own, any type of SQL database. So this one is just an example that has some information about cells, about some artists that do some music stuff. So nothing that important, but just a data example. And before I start chatting with it, as we talk, we should bring some metadata or training information about this database. So here, the first type of metadata information you can provide to Vanna about your database is DDL type. And here this query will bring information about the schema and metadata information about my tables that I have here. That's why you can see when I added this to my as a training data, some information about the schema has been added about my database here to Vanna. Okay. Then again, another type of DDL, you can obviously add as much as you want in different types. The second type of training that I told you about is free text information. For example, if in your business you have a specific keywords that you want to let the LLM understand before generating a SQL query for you, that will be helpful. Add it there. So this one comes with one example, nothing relevant to my database. Or again, another type of SQL questions or queries that you can add here as a metadata few-shot learning. You can have it here as well. Then I added these all as a training data or metadata to Vanna, and I could list them all here. You can see I have three type of training data: SQL, DDL. SQLs are the one that I added on the top, and DDLs are the one that we grabbed it from the DDL query, and documentation, which is my free text that we just added on the top here. And obviously you can delete any of them if you don't want to using the ID. I tried that and it worked successfully. Now you can start chatting with your SQL database. So here as an example, I'm saying what is the total cells? It gave me the answer. But I don't want to chat with my SQL database using like a notebook like this. Obviously I want to have a user interface like this one. That's why I told you Vanna comes with the Flash app as well that you don't need to create. It's wrapped already. So I ran it. It is running on this server, but of course you can run it in your local server, on cloud, wherever you want to. So I clicked on this link, and there you go. Here's my user interface that I'm connected, and I can start chatting with my SQL database. Let me, for example, ask total sales per artist. Okay, hopefully that's a good question. It was pretty fast because I think I asked this question multiple times to test before I record the video. So it is going to the metadata first to check if that's a relevant information there and do similarity using embedding to bring the answer. So that's what I assume. So that was pretty fast. But as you can see, it generated the query and directly give me the results in a table. I can download it as a CSV, and also it plot the results as well for me in an interactive mode. I can play with the using Plotly. And if I say the results, and it's asking me, Vanna, that did you like the result were correct or not? If I say yes, it will add it as a training data or metadata to my training data that it will show you. So I'm gonna say, yeah, that was a good one. I'm gonna add it. So perfect. And also I can ask follow-up question if you want to make it like a chatbot. But in order to make it like a chatbot, the LLM should see the history of my conversation. That's why you need to enable this. That means LLM might see some results of my data. For example, LLM might say this, might say this. And if you don't want LLM say this and you want to keep it like a direct question, answer, then keep it as is. But if you want to make it a flow out of it like a chatbot, you should add this parameter to true so it can continue asking follow-up questions. Now, the training data that we created using Notebook, you can also create, delete, or add from this UI as well. You can see that the total says we just asked, right? It was good. I asked that, for example, add it as an example to the training data. You can see it's added. So that was a question. That was the generated query, for example. So it's a SQL type of training data provided. And all this stuff we talked about already or had it here. We can delete or add new one. Again, DDL, documentation, SQL. So 3 type of metadata you can provide, which that vector DB we talked about gonna host them and do the similarity to retrieve and give it to the LLM if needed to generate a query for us. So this was the open source community-based version of Vanna, but I was also checking their website. As you can see in their pricing section, this is the one we tried, which we bring our own component using any LLM, using any vector DB. And of course, this video is not sponsored by Vanna. I'm just sharing this FYI. You can go with the free version, which means you need to create an account here. You don't need to bring your OpenAI, Azure OpenAI key stuff or anything. They give you GPT 3.5 access, but of course with daily limits. You cannot just keep asking questions. And you don't need to bring any vector DB to host metadata. They will do it for you. And of course, upgrading more, you will have more capabilities, as you can see here. So to quickly show you how that free version look like, I already created an account. Here's the free version. You can start creating a RAG model. This is different than LLM model, to add some training data about your database, the same thing that we did, and start chatting with it. You can monitor your usage, the daily limits, and of course you don't need to again bring your own OpenAI key or your own vector database. And of course you can upgrade as needed. All right, so that was about Vanna. And the approach that they took to chat with SQL query was slightly different than any other open source solutions that I have seen. And given that they already provided this open source version, so thought to share that with you, you can absolutely use it for free. And in order to start, if you just answer these questions like what database you want to talk with, what LLM you're going to use to talk with database, and what vector DB you want to use to store the metadata, you select that all and it will give you the started code if you click on get started. All right, that was about Vanna or chat with your SQL data. I hope you enjoyed. If yes, I would be very thankful if you like the video and share your thoughts in comments section. Thank you.
Once you start serving others, you'll get power, motivation, and unstoppable discipline. Forget yourself, but do not lose yourself. Hold tight to the core of your soul. Dream big, my friends, believe in yourself, and take action. Till next video,